We look at arm locks with the Hanbo.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
We have already derived quite some techniques with our Hanbo. In the last video, we have made disarms with it. So an attacker with a short stick was attacking us. We were deflecting with the Hanbo and then disarming the attacker. Now we use the exact same motions as with the disarms, but we place the Hanbo not between stick and hand of the attacker, but between the forearm and basically into the elbow joint. By doing the same motion as with the disarm, we get to an arm lock, more precise to an arm key. In the case of angle 1, it's a chicken wing type of arm lock. In general, be a bit careful when you perform these. This is now the non-slide strike version. You can see that. We will have later on also the slide strike versions. When you do arm locks, arm keys with a Hanbo, it's at first feels very weak because you don't use your own arms but the stick. And that's part of the problem because you don't have the same response of pressure. When you use the stick as an arm lock, you have a much longer lever as if you would only use your own arms. And that means these arm locks and arm keys are usually much more painful and they can dislocate, for example, the shoulder much easier than without the stick. So be careful when training in a way that if you are unsure, let the arm slip out and whatever. Don't be frustrated by that. Be more careful, otherwise you will hurt your training partner. If we look in detail on these arm locks, they are very simple arm locks. This is really just chicken wing and figure 4 type entrances. With the stick, we have an additional source of pain because the stick usually also puts pressure onto the bones or directly around the joint. In some cases, it can drag the joint apart. So this is very, very painful. Also, the muscles around the bones get pressured, and often you will find pressure marks later on also on your skin. Overall, these type of arm locks are very painful. They are very versatile. They give you a very simple control over an attacker. The question is now often, why should we have such a situation that an unarmed person is attacking us where we have a stick? Yeah, first, this does not have to be the case like that. If we have an attacker with a stick, we learned last time that we can, of course, disarm the person. We could use the same motion also when an attacker has a stick, but move further in, so shorten the distance, and then we would use our Hanbo not at the hand but at the elbow joint, so we could use these arm keys also if the attacker would be armed. Especially with the slide strikes, we have a bit of a different situation. We could, for example, imagine an attacker that has, if we talk in a historical context, a short blade weapon. We use the slide strike to disarm the person by simply hitting with a lot of force onto the hand, but then we don't have yet control. So after this type of strike to disarm the person, we would then use an arm key to further control the person. And that's probably where a lot of these techniques come from. We can also have other situations where it comes to that. For example, when we train exactly what we did last time, attacker, short stick, we use the Hanbo to disarm the person. What should this person now do? He or she will not simply stand around, but probably try to attack us again. There are several ways how he or she could do that. The attacker could grab the stick. We will deal with that in another video. Or the attacker could simply strike. And then we are right in the situation where we are. If we think, of course, self-defense situation, if we are indeed armed with an umbrella, or if you are already in need of a stick and you really have a walking cane or something like that, we could definitely have a situation where an attacker would try to grab us or strike after us. And we could then use the umbrella dagger or the cane to deflect the incoming attack, we could then simply continue the motion that we are already in, and we come into one of the arm locks. How do we continue from here? There are several possible outcomes after this arm lock. We could do this arm lock more like a throwing motion, so we could step further in, straighten our arms. Danger is here, we could dislocate really the shoulder, but we could simply push away the attacker, most likely onto the ground, and then try to escape. Would also be possible, of course, if we feel still endangered, if the person is on the ground, that we strike with the stick to a vulnerable point and try to control the attacker on the ground. We can do further complex techniques, and we will explore that in some future videos, where we go from these arm locks, for example, to transportation type arm locks, so that we can take the person somewhere. If we think already in the direction of security personnel, so if you're using a stick as a security person and you wrap up somebody with an arm lock, you could then, for example, continue and try to use handcuffs and secure the person or similar stuff. If you are in a group situation that you have maybe two defenders that try to calm down a person that is not fully consciousness, then we could also use the stick to tie up the arm and further tie up the person. These are things we will explore in future videos. Most important for me here is really the point that the motion of the disarm and the motion of the arm lock is basically identical, and the only difference we can really recognize is the distance. That means whatever you have in your repertoire, also from other martial arts, in arm locks or in disarms, these can be transferred to the other category by simply changing the distance. I have taught martial arts now for over 30 years, and for a lot of people it's always overwhelming how many possibilities there are, and I'm always explaining that martial arts basically consists only of a handful of motions, and the disarm and the arm lock is one of the easiest examples. If you come, for example, from Filipino martial arts, they have a lot of disarming techniques, and all of these are in fact arm locks if we just change to a closer distance. This is very important in my view for learning martial arts, because that again offers us active learning. If you're interested in the principle, I have some videos about that, because active learning is interesting because we can deeper, faster and more effectively learn very complex techniques, and also in a self-defense situation. This only means I have to decide for a motion, not for an action. If there is an attacker with a stick attacking me and I basically have to decide, okay, I make now this defensive motion, I can often not influence if it will become a disarm or it will become an arm lock. If the attacker stays at a bit more distance, the same motion might lead to a disarm. If he would storm further in, I might be too close for a disarm, but then catch him in an arm lock. That's the idea behind it, and if you train with this idea in mind, you will not only improve your training and also your teaching, if you teach it like that, but you will very likely also improve your self-defense capabilities. With this, I hope we could inspire you, and I hope to see you around next time.